I don't think it's just about the border. I think there are some other things that the president is interested in. Certainly, one of the things you hear about down here is the whole issue of the trade balance.
I don't think there's two tariffs. I think the fentanyl tariffs, the 2510 tariffs, will come back if we do not make serious efforts to reduce the number of deaths that are happening in the US that we're responsible for with fentanyl. So I think we have to make sure that we take that part of it seriously. And then round two is a renegotiation of the Canada, US, Mexico trade agreement.
Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith earlier on this show on the chances Canada can turn a 30-day tariff reprieve into permanent trade war peace with U.S. President Donald Trump. Just what are the odds of that, and how high is the risk of this uncertainty for our economy? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. With me tonight, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is here. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former leader of the federal NDP, Tom Mulcair, is with us, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief, Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Very nice to see you. Brian, I'll start with you on that sort of central question, I think, on Canadians' minds tonight. What do you think will inform the answer of whether or not this reprieve turns into something more?
I think we've seen over the last few days, weeks, and even months, everybody trying to predict what Donald Trump is thinking, why he is doing the things that he is doing. There are lots of hypotheses out there, but I'm not sure anybody knows. And frankly, I'm not even sure people around him and in his own administration are fully on the side or even aware of what's happening and why. So I think the push came to shove. The Americans themselves are probably the key ally here for Canadians. At the end of the day, as we all know, if the tariffs would have been put on, the retaliatory tariffs would have been put on, it would have hurt Canadians, absolutely, and our economy, but it also would have hurt consumers and Americans and their economy. So I think that at the end of the day was probably what paused this. And then the political aspect of it, Donald Trump wants to get wins. He wants to seem to be powerful and to be this master negotiator. So he wants concessions. He wants to be able to show people that he pushed and bullied people. That's really, it's not sort of just a tactic. It's what he wants to be known as. And the concession, if we even call it that, is something that was already in place. So I think it really is just going to be spun by Trump and his administration as a win. They'll look for more wins over the next 30 days, but he's unpredictable. And that unpredictability stems from the fact that none of us can actually really with certainty say why he is doing this, and linking it to fentanyl, and he's done that for a while now, but he's linked it to other things during that time as well. So really we can't put our finger on it, which makes it all that much more difficult to be able to try to mitigate and try to address.
Just to clarify, the fentanyl czar is a new position that was added yesterday at some point. There's one new thing. And labeling the cartels as terrorist entities. I think, though, Brian's point is obviously one that I think resonates with a lot of Canadians, Lisa. The fact that one day we're talking about even in the same day, Trump talked about a trade deficit that he labeled as subsidization. He talked about annexing Canada at length again, and he talked about the border. What do you think this is actually about, or is it impossible to even answer that?
I actually don't know if I care anymore what it's about, Vassy. I mean, I'm going to go with this from the adage. No, seriously, I'm at the adage of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And are we going to stick around and wait for him to dangle the tariffs and then pull them away after 30 days again? Or are we going to figure out what we're going to do together as a country in order to make sure we're never put in this vulnerable position again? And I actually prefer the latter. I think that we should totally be thinking about how we're going to shore up Canada, move forward, and make it so that we're not as concerned about whether or not 2 years from now Donald Trump has some kind of premonition that he wants to have Canada as the 51st state yet again, and we're going down the same road. So I know we love psychoanalyzing what he is and who he is, and that it's entertaining as old heck, and I love doing it all weekend. But I'm kind of done on it now, and I want to see some action with respect to getting our own house in order.
I'm sure none of you have to listen to self-help podcasts in the way that I do, but there's a really famous one out right now with a theory, let them. It's like the big edict, right? Like, and that's sort of what you're talking about, right? Like, let them, Tom, but the conversation here could turn to what we can control, which I totally get. The only concern I have is, like, the stuff that we can do in our control is not in the, it's not going to have an impact necessarily right away. It would take a bit more time, like diversifying markets and breaking down internal trade barriers. It's not overnight, but it's, at the same time, I get what Lisa's saying. Like, let him do what he's going to do. We have to focus on other things.
But for decades, there have been voices in the sphere of Canadian economics who have been pleading for Canada to be more autonomous, to have better control of our own resources, to have a better control of our economy. And when we talk about Mr. Trump wanting to renegotiate the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, it's worth bearing in mind that he's the same Donald Trump who just a few years ago declared that NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement, was the worst deal ever made. He was going to renegotiate it, and he renegotiated it. He signed it, and now he's saying that that's a terrible deal for him too. So it's a bit of a game. You could hear it in Trump right after Mr. Trudeau had gone down to meet him at Mar-a-Lago. He boasted on U.S. television. He was down here within 15 seconds, proving that he was the bully. People were going to react to his stuff. We got that again yesterday on the American news shows. Senior government administration officials boasting that Canada was on one knee, that sort of thing. This is the Trump way, and it's something that we don't want to get used to, but it's going to be a reality. It's a reminder, it's been 2 weeks since his inauguration. We got 4 more years of this stuff. So, we might as well just breathe through the nose and understand that it's going to take a concerted approach across the country. But I'll say this. I think that Trump did us a favor, because he got us to concentrate on what people have been talking about Canada having to do for years. And now we're going to look at ourselves and say, you know what? We've got other allies out there. We've got other trading partners. We should develop those. We talk about it a lot, but we never really get to it. So let's start working with, in particular, Europe a little bit more than we have been, and make sure we're not put in this vulnerable position, because we are very, very vulnerable to this sort of bullying by our own choices.
Do you think, Benzie, that this will be the galvanizing force to see that through?
I mean, for now it is, Vassy, but even Premier Smith kind of seemed to buy the line about fentanyl in her interview with you just now, that it's just not accurate. I just don't think I don't think it's helpful to the Canadian Federation to have one premier spouting the Trump line when it isn't actually the case. I mean, obviously, hard drugs are something we should be concerned about, but to equate ourselves with Mexico is just, it's irresponsible and reckless. And I don't think the other 12 premiers are going to be too thrilled with what she was saying to you just now. Having said that, Lisa and Tom and Brian are right. We do need to diversify as a country, but it's really easier said than done. I mean, it takes years to build pipelines to go east-west. It takes years to do defense procurement with Europe. Why didn't the Prime Minister Trudeau say we're thinking about canceling the F-35 and buy Saab fighters from Sweden or Eurofighters from France and the United Kingdom? We could have done that, or he could have threatened to do that. And maybe he may yet do that. But it is a wake-up call. But I'm old enough to remember when a prime minister named Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau, was saying in the 1980s that we needed to foster more ties with Europe because at that time he didn't want to be so closely tied to Ronald Reagan's United States or Richard Nixon's United States before that. So it's tough, though. It's easier said than done.